trying, and if you're going to try to move it, you ought to do it in the cold months of the year.
Yeah.
But if it's really, really leggy, you're better off to get a new
My
one.
son is probably going to hang in there with it and try to make it working.
Yeah. No, possum haw, any of the hollies are pretty much sun lovers.
Is that a caladium, that green on green?
Nope, that we'll talk about in just a minute. That's a type of alocasia. Other things that are pretty that can be used in ground covers in shady areas, the so-called asparagus ferns. They're not ferns at all, but really three different forms of this that you're likely to see. This is one they call asparagus springeri. The one that has the more conical growth is actually a variety. This is asparagus densiflorus variety springeri. That's a very closely related plant. That's asparagus densiflorus myri, the one they call the foxtail. It will do well in a shady area. There's another real pretty one, if somebody didn't buy it all this week, called the so-called Ming fern, asparagus myrioclatus. Is a beautiful, very lacy looking form of asparagus. Makes a wonderful cut flower, or cut foliage rather, if you're doing cut flowers and you want a really pretty foliage to mix with it. And I think we probably have some. Again, I took off a little early yesterday to do the newsletter, and I don't know what sold after we left. But yesterday morning, there were a bunch of the Ming ferns up just to the right up in our little shade area up there. Also good evergreen plants. Now, most years, this is going to remain evergreen. And this is the so-called variegated ginger. And this is a gorgeous plant if you're looking for colorful foliage in a shady spot. Variegated ginger will do well. I was down at the Botanical Gardens at a function a couple of nights ago, and their variegated ginger is in bloom. And if you've never seen it in bloom, it has most unusual little kind of cockle shell flowers on it as well. But anybody that says you just have to have boring green things in the shade, you've not found the variegated ginger. This is an excellent plant to use in a shady area. But one thing about variegated ginger, it's almost always sold in a small pot. But when it's mature, it's going to be this tall and this big around, or bigger. I've seen some that never froze, you know, that were like this size. So like all landscaping, keep in mind the mature size that this is going to grow to. But it's an excellent plant for a shady area. Yes?
I've seen it in a variegated red.
Mm-hmm.
Is that okay? Is that?
Yeah.
That's a different.
It's a different one, but it will do a bright shade as well.
Oh, Bob, but we can, like, if it starts getting really big, we can cut it back.
Sure, absolutely.
Just to keep
But
it
once it matures, it will be an ongoing process to try to keep it to a small size.
Bob,
Yes.
getting back to the asparagus farm, I
Uh-huh.
have great big pots that are just root bound like crazy. What do you do with them when they're gorgeous, but you water them, and
You enjoy them.
That's what our roots are.
Yeah, you know, just put it in that place, you know, where all I have is the leaves.
Sure. You can certainly plant them in the ground if you can dig a big enough hole.
That's what I'm thinking, it's hard as a rock.
Can you separate?
God, I'm trying to dig it out
No.
with a knife.
If you're trying to soften the soil, you know, something like Medina Plus or something will work to soften it. But again, underneath those big magnolia trees, you may hit a lot of roots. But dig and bar and a sharp shovel. If you can get a big enough hole, it will do fine in the ground. Or bust the bottom out of that pot, sink it about 4 inches down, and just let it grow that way.
Sometimes it'll break the pot for you.
Yeah, yeah. But no, you really can't divide them. You take an axe to divide them, and you tear up. They're growing from a crown, even though they have a huge amount of roots. They don't have underground stems and things that can really be divided very well. So it's put it in a bigger pot, put it in the ground, or give it away.
Well, we can't get it from our balcony upstairs. It's so big. I haven't figured out how.
You can cut them back. You can cut them back. You can totally cut the top off,
They're beautiful.
and they'll just put on a whole bunch of new shoots coming out. But yeah.
It'll freeze and do that.
Well, it's been a long time since we had a freeze. It was hard enough to do it. There is one other plant that I want to mention, but I'm not going to encourage you on this too much unless you just really like it. This is a plant they call a Japanese Aurelia, also known as a Fatsia. And these plants are excellent for the shade if you have soil that drains well and if you watch your watering. This is a plant that if it gets too dry, it dies. If it gets too wet, it dies. It really hates wet feet more than anything else. So if you're going to plant this, Plant it where you have really good drainage and try to keep it from ever drying out completely. It's an excellent plant for the shade, but not everyone is successful with it. Like I say with aspidistra, if you can't grow this stuff, it's time to move to an apartment. This is a little bit more temperamental. But if you're looking for some variety and something that'll grow 4 to 5 feet in height, the so-called Aurelia or Fatsia can be a real good choice. Okay, so those are some of the evergreen, what I would call medium-sized plants for you to put into your shady area. I want to talk briefly about ground cover materials that will do well in there. And for evergreen, there are 3 of them that really come to mind. You know, I think we have them over here again, just one room to bring everything. But dwarf monkey grass, if you want something that looks like grass, the little dwarf monkey grass or dwarf Ophiopolgon loves a shady spot. It can be planted almost anywhere. It is a little bit slow to grow and spread, but it'll do just fine in your shade garden. It is also used for people that put flagstone down for a walkway. You can also put it in between the rocks and let it grow up. It's real pretty. It's sort of a natural mortar between the rocks. But if you're going to plant dwarf monkey grass or any plant between flagstones or whatever, plant it down low. You want the crown of the plant to be like an inch down from the edge of the rock. The temptation is to plant it up, you know, right where the soil is even with the top of the rock. The problem with that is if this turns into a higher traffic area from dogs or people, you will wear it down. You'll wear it down to soil level and you'll probably kill it. If you have it recessed down about an inch down, kind of like getting a haircut, you can wear the top of it over and over and over. You can wear the top of it off and it'll keep right on coming back out and will look real good. So dwarf monkey grass in small areas is one of my favorite plants, you know, to use for a ground cover material. If you want a vining plant, the 2 good choices are either vinca, the evergreen vincas, vinca major or vinca minor, or Asiatic jasmine. The vinca is faster growing, but it is susceptible to a little caterpillar that wants to come in every now and then, and in an entire weekend, or in a weekend, can eat your entire crop of leaves. I've known people to leave for the weekend and have a nice green ground cover and come back on Monday and have nothing left but bare stems. It grows right back out, but this little green caterpillar about this long will occasionally get after the foliage on your vincas. You can spray a little BT, you can control it very easily. We don't recommend spraying BT everywhere, of course, because we'd be hurting our butterfly populations, but that's the one disadvantage to the vinca. But it is a faster growing ground cover. Asiatic jasmine is probably the toughest and hardiest of all ground covers, and it does fine in the deep shade, it does fine in full sun. But always remember that the saying about ground covers, I think, was developed for Asiatic jasmine. The first year they sleep, the second year they creep, the 3rd year they leap. Back in the days when I was digging holes and doing landscape planting, I always told people that wanted Asiatic, you're going to hate it the first 2 years. But I'm warning you, it's not going to do anything real appreciable. But I'm telling you now, don't call me till the 3rd year or the 4th year. And nobody ever called. But if you're planting Asiatic jasmine, don't wait until the night before the party to do it. The only other option is to get the bigger pots of it, and then as we've discussed, sometimes digging a hole in among tree roots and things can be a problem. But if you've got some time to play with, planting the 4-inch pots of Asiatic jasmine, give it about 3 years, it's going to give you an absolutely beautiful ground cover. But you're not going to like it for the first 3 years. So, you know, move off to Hawaii or somewhere for a couple of years, rent your house out, and when you come back, you'll have a nice ground cover. Yes?
On the Asiatic jasmine, if you let it get really thick, can you cut it way, way down without damaging it? Or
You can cut it way, way down. It'll take it a while to come back.
Okay.
But that's another, you know, another good point. If you let it get really high, all the new growth is going to be up on the top, and you're going to go down and cut it off to the very woody base. It's going to take it a while to come back out again. Try not to let it get that thick.
Okay. Is the
Yes.
dwarf form any different?
The dwarf form is slower growing, and it is somewhat lower. They call it Asian minor, and it's an excellent plant. But the first year it sleeps, the second year it kind of sleeps, the third year it kind of creeps, the fourth year it creeps, the fifth year, you know, you're looking at 5 or 6 years to really get a thick stand of it with the Asian minor. But it is an excellent plant. Yes, ma'am.
Those of us who already have the Asiatic jasmine that is established, what is the optimum height?
Whatever height you like it. I like it at about 4 inches. And if you prune it once a year, you can keep it at 4 inches. But don't wait, like she was indicating, don't wait 10 years and then decide you want it back.